A bill, yes, I'm only a bill, and I'm sitting here on Capitol Hill. Well, it's a long, long journey to the capital city. It's a long, long wait while I'm sitting in committee, but I know I'll be a law someday. At least I hope and pray that I will, but today I am still just a bill.
Gee, Bill, you certainly have a lot of patience and courage.
Well, I got this far. When I started, I wasn't even a bill. I was just an idea. Some folks back home decided they wanted a law passed, so they called their local congressman, and he said, "You're right, there ought to be a law." Then he sat down and wrote me out and introduced me to Congress, and I became a bill.
You see, folks, that's how it's supposed to work. We're supposed to take our issues to our local congressmen and state lawmakers and local officials, and they therefore are supposed to then address the issues. And that's what I've been doing here in the state of Washington, and so I wanted to bring that up for folks and let them know what was going on in regards to some restraining orders that were put on me. And at first I thought they were criminal restraining orders, because I have had a couple of those put on me here in the past, and as injured workers you should learn about those, because you may find yourself in those positions without even realizing it, that you're in one of those positions where you find yourself having restraining orders put on you. I have several of them throughout my saga with work comp and SSDI. One of them is with the SSDI department, which I have always followed, and the FBI guy agrees. He knows I have one, and I always adhere and never have violated it. And I don't know, 5 or 6 years now. Plus I have some with the State Board of Industrial Appeal, I think it is, for workers comp, with the judges, which I never violate and never intend to. I have other ones with other doctors that with my wife's care, where somebody almost killed my wife. But anyways, I adhere to the what do you call them? Restraining order. I don't violate them. So it's, I've always adhered to them, is what I'm trying to get at. And I've had a couple of them happen already. But most of them have always been part of some criminal thing. So I was perplexed when this one come and they weren't sending me to jail. I was like, I usually go to jail when they do this, but apparently you can get them civilly, and I never knew that. And apparently I've never had domestic violence issues. I've never had gone through divorces or anything before, so I didn't know that you could be civilly accused of harassment and not have it be criminal. I didn't know there was that. But anyways, there is. And apparently somebody chose to do that on me, but the people pressing these charges on me, I'm okay with that. If it makes them feel better, I will stay restrained from them. If they don't want to hear me, I really don't want to be around them anyways. But when they're political candidates, and they're local candidates, and I've been told by my mental health folks for 2 years from CMAR Behavioral Health, who was court-ordered for 2 years of that time, criminally court-ordered, that I need to make these information videos and sing songs to be heard by my lawmakers, so that I can get my information fixed for the injured workers of America, and the minimum human rights, basic human rights that are being violated, addressed by our state and federal lawmakers. In order to do so, my therapist also said, well, you know, the bigger wigs or whatever, the higher ups, aren't listening to you. Why don't you try reaching out to some of the local people? So I thought, well, sure, why not? That makes sense. So I reached out to one of the local people who was running for the local city council as a Bernie-crat in my neighborhood, and I thought, well, they would want to help. And ended up, no, they didn't want to help, and it turns out not only were they a candidate for city council and a Bernie-crat, they were also an legislative aide to one of my state representative aides for my local community who just got in. Her name is Representative Emily Hicks, or Wicks, who I've also tried to get help from, who, like Mike Sells and all the other senators, don't want to help me. And that's why I wanted to share this one letter before we go further to talk about these other restraining order I had put on me. And I have restraining orders, and I will adhere to them. And if that makes this other person feel better, I will adhere to it. But I will tell the world that you, as a political candidate, and your boss, who is a state representative, seem to be utilizing this system in order to silence a man who's crying out for you to hear about the human rights violations happening to folks in our community, that his mental health therapist is told to make this video so you will hear him, but you will find out later in the documents, they state right in their documents they don't want to hear me or what I have to say. So I then therefore get angry and start yelling and screaming profanities, in which then I got myself in trouble for. But I will go on. What I wanted to share is a letter that I'd reached out to Washington State Senator Bob Halsagawa on several occasions, and at one point, I had a 45-minute conversation with him regarding what we need for injured workers here in America, and what I needed from him as a state lawmaker in a letter so that I could then take that to federal lawmakers like Rick Larson and tell them we need this help. And my whole Dem party would get on our side and help. But anyways, this is a letter that Bob's assistant sent back to me, because I have sent several of these information videos that I'm hardly in them. They're just very informative videos that explain my issue and the harm to humans in our community. I'm trying to get these state lawmakers and candidates running as Democrats in my community to step up and represent and talk about, and they're refusing to. So it's frustrating that they seem to be using the process against me when I'm trying to get my voice heard, and it's the whole reason I'm screaming out in rage and anger at them is because they're refusing to hear me, and I'll tell you why. But first, I was told to talk to these people by Bob Halsagawa, a representative Halsagawa, so I want to share a little bit of the letter I have with him and see if I can transfer over here. I think you guys can see this now. Anyways, this was a letter that I had sent, that was sent to me from Jenny Chang. He is also a legislative assistant to Senator Bob Halsagawa, and it was dated Wednesday, November 24th, 2021. Hi, Darren. Thank you for your patience. Apologies for the delay. Senator Halsagawa let me know that a federal oversight and National Workers' Comp Commission already exists. It's OSHA. Well, that's not correct, and that's not a lie, and that's not the national mission that we need. Nonetheless, I'll move on. They basically give me excuses for not putting our issue on the table. And then they go on to say the Washington Industry Safety and Health Act Commission oversees state L&I laws, blah, blah, blah. Basically, he gives me a little list of excuses for why we don't need the federal oversight that the United States Congressional Research Service has told injured workers we do need, and so did Senator Patty Murray and Tom Perez and Senator Sanders in 2015. Nonetheless, their letter here towards the end says, if you'd like a letter, because I asked him for a letter, and he told me he would do it, and then he never did. He said he might write it, and he never did write it. So he never promised to write it. He said he may write it. So I called him out on it, and his assistant, and this is what they wrote back. They said, if you'd like a letter to be sent by a legislator that would be more under the jurisdiction of your own state legislatures or elected officials who represent your district, have you tried to make the request of them? Well, of course I have. Additionally, Senator Kaiser, Washington State Senator Kaiser, chairs the Labor and Commerce, and she and everyone else on that committee would be the best people for you to reach out regarding labor issues. I hope this was somewhat helpful. Have a wonderful holiday weekend. Best regards, Jenny Chang, Executive Legislative Assistant to Senator Bob Halsagawa, Chair. So anyways, let's see if I can transfer us back here. There we go. Okay, there we go. So there it goes. Washington State Senator Bob Halsagawa tells me to contact my local state representatives here in my district in Everett, Washington, Snohomish County, which would be Emily Wiggs, Mike Sells, and June Robinson. And that's pretty much it. And then a federal guy would be, of course, Rick Larson. And Jason Call, who is running for Rick Larson's spot, who I also try to seek help from all the time, who didn't press charges on me like this, which that's why it's frustrating that they're doing this way when I've been trying to get help from these people for a few years now, at least 5 years. So I'll go into this. The Bob Halsagawa also tells me to contact State Representative Karen Kaiser, who I have contacted, and they call the cops on me rather than address the human rights issue for which I am talking about, the human rights violations that our state work comp system and LNI creates on the work comp LNI offsets, work comp SSDI offsets. They don't want to address the issues and would silence us, and rather jealous because Karen Kaiser, like I said, tried to be jailed over calling her out and for failing to be honest about this issue. And now again, like I said, I have this local city councilwoman who actually ends up being an administrative legislative aide to one of the ladies that Bob Halsagawa tells me I'm supposed to contact, my local people like Emily and Wicks. And she's new now, so I'll give her some, slack for that, because I think she's newer. Because the other ones like June Robinson and Mike Sells, I've been trying constantly to get a hold of and only shunned and ignored. But they never, and I call them out and call them names a lot, and they don't press charges on me, so it's kind of frustrating. Especially when I'm trying to help humans, I'm trying to get the harm that's harming injured workers in our community, that's giving many people PTSD in our community, yet we don't have state lawmakers want to address the fact that our human rights are being violated by state LNI laws that may be failing us to a point that it's creating PTSD for certain people, like even myself in certain conditions. And I have people like Seymour that tells me I'm telling the truth, and I'm supposed to make these information videos to be heard by these lawmakers. And yes, I did get in trouble, and yes, I did some time for my crimes for yelling at the work comp judges and SSDI judges and maybe a doctor. So I did my time for my crimes. So now I'm still coming to my lawmakers for the PTSD that helped create those crimes, and the root cause that was angsting all this patient rage and anger that I had to start with, that we've been trying to treat and get fixed through Seymour. The therapist has been great, saying that, you're right, you're correct, sing kumbaya to get your voice heard and get the lawmakers to listen to you. But when Seymour management, when I want them to talk to Rick Larson, they failed to tell him the truth. They could tell the work comp judge, they could tell the federal SSDI judge, but when I want them to tell Rick Larson what's happened to me and my family and my father-in-law being worked to death in the state after his on-the-job injury, a Mexican immigrant, they don't want to talk about that. Nonetheless, we're here to talk about the restraining orders, so we'll come back to that. Like I say, I will adhere to these because I always do, and I do what the police tell me to do. And that's why I'm not using her name per se, and because number one, don't want to give her credit. She doesn't have, and she didn't become a city council member. She lost. I was only reaching out because I thought she was with the Bernie crowds and would be able to enlighten Jason Call and maybe some of the others now that we've failed on Medicare for all and hold Washington for 5 years. Maybe instead of telling injured workers to go away with our federal human rights issue, we could step up to the plate and start representing us. And she needed to, in order to do that, she only needed to click on these YouTube videos and hear what I had to say. But here's what I want to share is that this person, who was a city council, running for city council, was a Bernie Crat, and was one of Emily Wick's state representatives, legislative aide, and still is, basically put these orders on me, and everything I said to her wasn't that bad. Yes, I called them whores and sluts and whatever else I did call them, but that's not because they weren't hearing me to start with. And in her charging papers, as these restraining orders, there's a part in here where she says all the stuff that I said, which none of it was really all that bad, and definitely was nothing harms to threat or hurt anybody for sure. And that's one reason the police are only doing it a restraining order instead of criminal orders, because they know I have no intent to harm any place, in person, thing, or body, or whatever you want to say, or self. Anyways, this person states right in here, and that's what in her charging report, that's why I thought probably the judge would throw it out. That's why I didn't want to bother or pay the $4,000 the attorney wanted to defend me in this matter. That's another issue. Where he said other people he would charge $2,000 for, but for me he'd have to charge $4,000 because it involves a political candidate. Anyways, she tells the judge, I left angry voicemails and blah blah, their place of work and stalked her, blah blah blah. I went to her places, her candidate places, and then to her only online. I never went to her place of employment or to her physical addresses, only to her campaign pages. And then she says her personal social pages. Well, all those social pages were campaign pages because you were campaigning on those social pages. Nonetheless, so I was calling out a candidate in my community to speak up, as I was told to do by my mental health DMAR representatives, who now fired me, by the way, too, in this whole process. And one of their operatives seems to be, and that's what I call her, an operative. She says right here, he says, I'm a political operative. I am a legislative assistant at the State House of Representative. Then she goes on to say he's emailed and called my work. He's emailed my website, my campaign website, my personal site, which is all campaign sites. Nonetheless, he started out in August emailing my office where I work as the legislative assistant to Representative Emily Wick. I found out he has a history of harassing people, so our office decided not to engage. So because the man has maybe possibly even a criminal history, maybe of harassment, we're not going to listen to his complaints here in Washington State. Our state lawmakers don't want to hear from people who may have harassment issues in the past, so therefore him reporting harm to him and other humans in our community, even by state lawmakers and the laws themselves, harming and violating our federal human rights. I like to question that. And so this is that's why I have no problem with this. But anyway, let me go on here. All of it, she says, and then he went to my campaign sites, blah, 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 blah. Reached out to my work office, left voicemails on my legislative cell phone. So yeah, everything is politically in work involved. As I'm trying to get my political candidates, who I'm supposed to take my issues to, for the humans in my community being harmed, to be heard, as they're telling me, you've made harassment and been charged with harassment charges, so we're not going to listen to anything Darren has to say. How is that helping our community? We should be listening to anybody, and even convicted criminals should have a voice in our community, especially if they've done the crime for their times and they're out. You shouldn't continue as a legislative aide or a state representative in my community, others have told me to come to tell you about this harm, and then you and your assistant seem to place harassment charges on me rather than listen to the videos that the mental health community has told me to make for you. Lawmaker Emily Wick. So I'm not upset with this low-lying lady. I have nothing to do with her. I never want to see her or anybody associated with this other person. She can have a restraining order. I'm going to wear that like a badge of honor at this point because I've stood up and spoke out in this community, and this shows what other people, Democrats, my own kind of Democrats who say they care about human beings, care about life, care about labor, yet won't represent us when we tell them that our federal human rights are being violated by the state lawmakers and that are in need of some minimum federal standards. My state lawmakers shouldn't fear federal standards here in Washington State if you're doing nothing wrong. And you should not have fear of some minimum federal standards. And a man in Alabama might get more than $35,000 for an amputated arm, and the guy in Georgia gets $750,000. We need some equality here. We need PTSD for police officers, let's say. We have it here in Washington. We got it because some people like me stood up and spoke up and then kind of forced you lawmakers into doing it. For what good they're worth. The presumptions for PSTS officers, PSD for police officers. But other states like Arizona don't have that. And so it's frustrating when I'm coming forward to you and asking you as a human being in the community to please stand up and represent us equally across the board in America today with some basic human rights, like we have a basic minimum wage. I don't think that's too much to ask for. And when everybody shushes me and closes me out because what you were enraged before, maybe I was enraged before because people weren't listening to me then too. Maybe people in our communities who are being hurt and harmed by others aren't being heard by our lawmakers, like Senator Patty Murray, as I've cried out to her for help, as the local SSDI bill and their operations have put me through mental health anguish and overpayment. The overpayments 2 times now that were like 9-month-long processes that ended up were fraudulent and in error because they owed me and my family money. So men with pens were intently harming me in my community, and I was trying to reach out to these lawmakers to be heard and helped, and they all shush, shun, shame, and shun rather than address our issues and put the solution on the table that we've been told since 1972 as workers in America, that we need these minimum federal standards so that we're all treated equal. So that, maybe gender bias and 10% with your body parts as a female are less than mine as a male because apparently we're superior to females, at least when it comes to workers' comp. There needs some equality there, and we need to talk about that, not keep shushing the men and women standing up and trying to be heard by our local lawmakers, because that's part of the problem. We can't just blame the people up top, and the people at the bottom seem to want to jealous as we speak out because we're enraged in anger and screaming profanities at them because they're refusing to hear us. And on this affidavit, like I say, I will wear the restraining order as a badge of honor, and I will honor it and not follow this, go to their Facebook pages or whatever. But I will share with the world that they, as an aide to my state representative aide, are doing this to me in this community, and that I have every right to share as a human being. And I hope the judge presiding over this case or any other further cases holding over my head in this community in Snohomish County take a look and hear what this human being is reaching out to them and trying to say. Not just, and I feared going to the court because I would not be heard. I'd be shushed and shunned by somebody who's probably another political operative, the judge themselves. I think we vote them in this community too as well. So I almost feel as though I'm being harassed by a political Democratic operative ran by Snohomish County, and I'm getting rather upset and angry by it because the mental health community in Seymour is a part of it, as they fired me from my mental health care, as they have their political operatives putting harassment charges on me. Now, the police officer that served the papers on me was really kind and courteous, and I kudos to him. And I guess that's where I'm going to live at. That, like I say, I'm going to adhere to the restraining orders. I always do. I couldn't fight it because I didn't have the $4,000 to give the man to go fight it. And actually, I did have the money because the SSDI bill had given me some, which I could probably do that. But I'm not going to spend $4,000 to defend myself against false accusations, and that's what this woman is making. You don't fear me. Jason Call don't fear me. Judge Ryan doesn't fear me. Who else? I don't know. SSDI Bill might have feared me, but he found out from the FBI who investigated me that there was nothing to fear from Darren except the truth being told and how people are hurting and harming him. Anyways, I feel for this lady, and I'm sorry, truly sorry if you feel threatened for your life by me, but I do yell and scream, but there was no threats to harm person, body, or harm. And a matter of fact, one of the comments was to say, bring it to me, bring it on, which was to bring it to me, not that I'm coming to hurt or harm anybody. So it's egregious to me that a judge would even sign off on this when she sees very much, she says, I'm an administrative aide, oh, I was also a candidate during this period, that you would go forth and allow me to be silenced by political candidates for calling them basically whores and ALEC BIZ sluts. And that's what it is at this point. If you can't stand up and be honest, as workers are being harmed and our human rights are being violated in America today by state laws that are failing us, that our own federal government has a report is telling us that, besides humans in your community also reaching out and telling you that, then there's something wrong with that. When this local city council, candidate for city council, wants to be a leader in my community, but she doesn't want to hear from the people who may have had charges or criminal charges pressed against them in the past, even though they've done their time, they've done the 2 years mental health treatment that was ordered by the court, and part of that ordered mental health treatment was to make information videos for people like her to listen to as she tells me, no, you've got harassment charges, and I've been told by others you've harassed people, so therefore we're not going to listen to anything you have to say or address any issues you're bringing up. This is America. This is wrong. And I call foul, and my human rights are being violated, and Snohomish County is waging a war on me, and the Democrats as well. The police officers, though, themselves see through some of this, and it is egregious that this should be happening. And this lady seems to be utilizing these criminal harassment laws as though I'm her husband, and I've stalked her, and I'm not. And had nothing to do with her home or her siblings or whatever, who was ever associated with this person. So it's frustrating that she works for my state lawmaker, who I'm also trying to get the voice heard. That's the phone calls to whose office I was calling to be heard, as they're telling me in writing in a court affidavit of law that she states right here, her and Emily Hicks' office, let's repeat, and I want to make sure we get this person's voice heard, because that's important in our community, right? To have our voices heard? Well, let's make sure. I found out he has a history of harassing people, so our office decided not to engage. So there you go. When Senator State Bob Halsagawa tells me to contact my lawmakers like Karen Kaiser, who calls the cops on me, and Emily Wicks, who also seems to want to jail me, then where is a human being and a citizen and a resident of this community and a citizen of this nation supposed to get his voice heard? Oh, where are we being represented as workers in our human rights? Why are we told by Senator Sanders, Patty Murray, and Tom Perez 5 years ago, we need these minimum federal standards, yet Jason Call, as I've called out for him to step up and represent and call out Rick Larson on this issue, he refuses to do so and says, my priorities are whole Washington and Medicare for all. I'm sorry, young man, if you're going to run for federal office, your priority needs to not be whole Washington. Now, Med for all, that's fine. But you should be not putting your state's rights and the biz man's ALEC rights above our workers' federal human rights that need to be on the table alongside any other state's rights that we may be fighting for. I call foul on the Democratic apparatus and the Democratic machine in Snohomish County that Mike Sells is a part of, Representative State Mike Sells, who's also on the Labor Committee. Step up, Mike, and speak up. How about the big boss, Jay Inslee? We've worked together for 25 years now from AmeriCorps back when I worked at the Yakima School District. I've always supported you, and still do. But if you ran for office, for president, and Senator Sanders as well, and Biden, and even Trump, none of you for 5 years could say one word about our workers needing minimum federal oversight that Senator Sanders wrote in a letter and told us about, but went silent about and never mouthed or gave us lip service towards. There's something wrong with that. It's egregious when somebody like myself has to scream out and speak out and gets labeled delusional, gets and gets enraged and gets the way we do. It's because we're not being treated, and also CMAR didn't want to give me any more meds either. That's another thing. Which I'm kind of halfway okay with that. I don't think I should be sedated. I don't think you should sedate a stallion. Thoroughbred or whatever. I'm a big racehorse. I was like that at work too. I always go, 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 go. Well, I can't physically go, go, but my mind tries to go, 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 as it's been forced to be my own pro se lawyer and be litigated against over and over in an attempt to hurt and harm me by my United States government through SSDI. All because I'm telling the truth about state work comp systems that have failed us. I don't know where to go with it. But I'm not hurting or harming any person, place, or thing. And actually, I'm singing and dancing and political romancing like the mental health therapist who CMAR just fired from me. And me and her got along great. She was saying, sing kumbaya, keep sharing your message, keep it out there. Someday somebody will hear you. As CMAR admin is siding with whole Washington advocates and pushing for whole Washington and Medicare for all. And I'm saying, could you tell Rick Larson as you're, whining and dining with him about the minimum federal standards and call him out on this issue? It's hurt me, hurt my father and myself. It's generationally now. My father was also hurt when I was a child, back in 1976. He spent 9 years fighting a war. It's time we address this issue. And, like I say, I earned some of those felonies, or whatever they were, for with the judges and the other ones. I did do those. I did actually make statements that warranted me going to jail. With this lady, these statements weren't there, and the police see that as well. And I've also learned to try and know I'm enraged, still not make threats to hurt, harm, person, place, or thing, which is really hard sometimes. It can be tough when you're really enraged and people are truly hurting you with their pens. Like SSDI bills, I've clearly showed through somebody who would pay attention and listen to anything I've had to say through these YouTube videos. And it only takes maybe 5-6 hours of videos time here to figure out that I'm telling the truth. FBI figured it out in a 45-minute conversation with me on the front porch. I don't know what to say. I'll leave it at that. I'm silenced, even when I do try to talk, and even in the injured worker sites, they don't want to hear what you have to say either. Half of them. So, with this, I'm probably going to have to say I'm going to hang it up. You can't fight for people's right to marry. You can't advocate for the work. It's rigged. It's stacked against the people. It's stacked against the humans. As I come forth to these state lawmakers and these local yahoos that are all jumping and fighting for political operatives, as I call her, and that's what she is and what she is, still is, and she's been able to utilize this criminal civil process to say, oh, she fears me. When I've lived here for 17 years, I spent 15 years of that at the hospital bedside taking care of human beings in this community, saving their lives. And if she would take time to hear me and even listen to some of the videos, I put forth my mental health records from CMAR. It states right in there what conditions I have, what I'm doing to seek help, and how I'm trying to seek their help through song and dance and sharing the truth. I like to say never give up, but it's been 10 years. Rather than listen, they'd rather jelly. Welcome to America.